Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I'm here to the first half of my May reading wrap up, so all the books that I've read so far in May. And the first book I want to talk about is Arthur by Mikael Lindnord. This is a non-fiction book that is about Mikael's relationship with this dog called Arthur, who he ended up finding when he was doing a race in Ecuador. So Mikael does these type of adventure racing and this really extreme form of racing that takes place over a course, a number of days, and it involves kind of racing, swimming, cycling, like map reading, mountaineering, and it's really tough, and he loves it, and he's kind of made his career out of doing these type of races. And when he was in Ecuador, he found this dog, this stray dog who he named Arthur, and they ended up forming a bond, and Arthur ended up joining the team for the last part of their race. And when they got to the finish line, Arthur kind of became this like little bit of a celebrity among the media, and Mikael had already formed like this really great attachment to Arthur. So this book is about Mikael's like relationship with Arthur, and then his him trying to desperately over the course of a number of days try and find a way to bring Arthur home to Sweden and to give Arthur a proper home. This is a dog who had been on its own for a very long time and really needed a bit of TLC and looking after. And it's just about the love that he had for Arthur, the bond that the two of them have, and how he made a promise to Arthur that he was going to look after him and he was never going to feel pain or suffering or feel alone again. This is just a lovely book. It is one that's perfect for dog lovers. There's like lovely, like a happy ending to the story. And I just really enjoyed it for what it was, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was an audiobook, and that is The Truth Must Dazzle Gradually by Helen Cullen. And this is a book, I've talked a little bit about this in my recent vlog, which I will leave linked up above, as I found this kind of a hard book to kind of rate or talk about because there was lots of different elements in it that kind of made me pause for thought a little bit. And this is a book where at the very start of the book we find out that the mother of this family is after dying, and it seems she's died in a really tragic way, and it most likely is pointing that she has taken her own life. And then we kind of reverse back a number of years and we meet the mother and the father at the very start of their relationship when they meet each other at Trinity College in Dublin. And then we follow their relationship as they eventually move to this island called Inishogue, and their children, the first years of their marriage, the first years of parenthood, and how the mother Maeve, her battle with mental illness and depression throughout this entire, like pretty much for her entire life, and mostly her adult life, she's always struggling with this depression that really threatens to take her over, which unfortunately eventually it does end up in that she does take her own life. And we kind of just see how her death affects the children and affects her husband, and then we follow them after her death as well to see how they kind of try and rebuild their life after this really horrible thing has happened. This was a weird one for me. The audiobook I wouldn't rate. I don't think the audiobook was great, more so because I think the man who was narrating the audiobook just didn't really do an American accent that well, and Maeve was American and it was just a little bit cringy, and the female voices as well weren't great. I found the look at mental illness, like I really liked that representation that was there, but I felt like there was really something lacking in terms of Maeve getting help and seeking out help. And obviously the worst does happen, but at no point do we see her going to, go to a counsellor or go to a doctor and seek help for her bad thoughts and her bad days. And it's something that her family just accepts, and her husband just accepts that now and again she's going to have these days or these moments or weeks where she's just going to lay in bed and do nothing, and she's going to let that sadness overwhelm her. And it was a little bit frustrating to see that there was never that extra step taken where she could have gotten help or could have gotten medication, or could have just been able to go and speak to someone that could have helped her. So there was this like real sadness to the book, the fact that this whole point that we were learning about the start of their relationship, well, how it's going to end eventually, and it was just there was just a real sadness to the book because of that. And then I did find afterwards the children are just, as they grow up and as they grow older, and sometimes the way they treat their father, who was just a lovely man, I just found them a little bit, they just weren't that nice. They weren't particularly nice characters. I kind of thought they were all stuck up at themselves and just didn't treat their dad very well and blamed him for things that were completely out of his control, and that was just frustrating as a reader as well. There was this theme, this like LGBT late coming out storyline in this that I thought was lovely, and it was really unexpected for me, but then once I got my head around it I actually really liked it. And I really liked how there was this really kind of moment in the book where the village comes together to support people, to support someone that they love and that they know, and that was a really nice part of the book that, as I said, I wasn't expecting but I did really enjoy. But overall this book just there's just parts of it that just made me feel a bit weird and uncomfortable because of that. There wasn't that extra step done to help Maeve with her depression, and there was that real element of sadness in it. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read a book for the Asian readathon, so I picked this book for my non-US centric pick or prompt. And that was If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is a book that I've heard quite a lot about. It's one I've had on my list, my NetGalley list for a while, that I wanted to read. And I'm really glad I picked this up because I ended up really enjoying it. In this book we follow 4 different Korean women. We are in South Korea, and we are following these women as they just kind of go about their normal lives, and we learn about their past and their present, and we also learn about their relationship either like with themselves and their body, or just with their culture, and the culture around beauty and beauty standards, and as well as kind of the expectations upon women, particularly like women, either girls who are single, and how they're supposed to look to attract men and to like get on and do well in life, and then the expectations upon a married woman to have a family, but then how hard it actually is to do that when they're not being paid very well, and their like maternity leave might not be particularly good. If you don't have a family, like a mother, like in-laws or your own family who are supporting you and helping you with rent or with childcare, you know, it's going to be very difficult to go and, you know, have a family of your own. So there are a lot of different things around here around Korean culture and that I learned that were really enjoyable. I thought the writing in this was so palatable and easy to read, and I felt really sucked into the story. I really liked each of the girls that we are following. They're all quite different. We're following an artist, we are following a hairdresser who had an accident when she was younger and is now mute, so she can't speak, so she writes everything down, and she has this like growing obsession with this K-pop star. As I said, we were following an artist who has a very rich boyfriend who she knows she's probably not going to be able to be with in the future because he's not going to be allowed to end up with someone like her with like not a lot of money in her family. And then we were following a girl who works in this place called a room salon, which is basically like a she's basically like a prostitute, and she works in these rooms, she drinks with these men, and then she's almost like an escort, and sometimes she will have sex with these men as well. She has had a lot of surgery on her face, and we see this pressure on her to keep these surgeries up, to keep this kind of the look that she has going. She racks up debt with this salon and with her madam, and this is how they kind of trap these girls, and they're never able to break away from this cycle of more or less prostitution or escort work. This gave me a really interesting look at what like South Korean culture and then just kind of the Asian beauty standards, and it was just so extreme, but it was really eye-opening, and I said I really enjoyed it. I liked each of the girls' stories, but overall I really enjoyed this one. Really recommend it and gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I read The Psychology of Time Travel by Kate Mascarenhas, and this is a book that was my belated Buzzwordathon pick for March. Really glad that I ended up really enjoying this. And I just wanted to also point out the cover of this, because it's this beautiful cross-stitch cover that I think is absolutely gorgeous. I really love the cover of this book as well. So this book starts out in 1967, where we are following 4 female scientists who end up making a breakthrough when it comes to time travel. And because of the time travel, one of the female scientists ends up having a little bit of a breakdown, and she gets kicked off the project, and for years and years she is trying to get back on it, and she is not allowed. And then time travel ends up becoming just like this normal thing that people can do, and it's like completely like normal to maybe see a future version of yourself or different versions of other people throughout time, and see someone maybe having lunch with like 7 different versions of themselves. And I really loved how time travel was done in this book, and how normal it became, and how it was just part of everyday life, and how it all worked and had its own almost like government body to manage it. And the way this was all put together I thought was really well done by the author. Because time travel is something that can be really tricky, and you wonder about like paradoxes and like the butterfly effect and all those kind of things, and I just think the way the author did it in this, and how she explained some things and how there were the rules and regulations, were done really well. Following the character who got kicked off the team, we are following her granddaughter. She is trying to uncover a mystery basically, and then it ends up we start looking into a murder mystery, and we're following characters who are trying to solve this murder that seems to be related to time travel. But I just really enjoyed this. I thought the story was really well done, and as I said, the time travel elements of it were brilliant. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. For my non-fiction pick for the Asian readathon, I picked up a book called The Wisdom of Tea by Noriko Morishita, and this is a really interesting book, and one that I am so glad I picked up. I would not have picked it up if it wasn't for this non-fiction prompt, because it was one that I just found in my library when I was looking for non-fiction by Asian authors, and it was kind of a short book. The cover was really sweet and lovely and really kind of stood out to me, and it felt like very calm almost, the cover, which definitely reflects the writing and the story within the book, because we are following Noriko as a young woman, and she starts taking tea lessons, following mostly the first 20-25 years of her tea lessons. And tea in Japan is this, it's almost like this ceremony or ritual. It's something that you study for years. There's a lot of rules around it. There's specific ways you're supposed to take tea, specific ways you're supposed to move and dress, and it is just so interesting. I will leave a video I saw below of kind of showing what taking tea looks like, and that I found very useful. I will leave that link below if anyone is interested. But this is just such a lovely book, and I learned a lot just about this type of tradition of tea, of having tea in Japan, and just the lessons that Noriko takes out of it around taking those moments for yourself, seeing the seasons change, because tea, the way they take tea and the types of like things they do when they're doing tea, it changes with each season. And they also take like these like sweet treats when they're taking tea, and the sweet treats as well kind of change every time. And the way she described these type of like delicacies that she was eating and how beautifully they were made and decorated, I loved reading about that. And in this is around like taking those times for yourself and seeking those moments in your own life around when you can just sit down and maybe listen to the rain, or you know, enjoy a cup of tea yourself. And even though like my type of tea is very different to the type of tea, the matcha tea that they are taking in Japan, it's still the same, that you can take that moment and just like sit down, enjoy whatever hot beverage or beverage that you're having, and take that moment for yourself, and then take it and like just listen to the world and be with yourself and forget all your worries. And yeah, just that kind of that moment for yourself and that moment to reflect. And I just really loved the lessons that I got from this. I just thought it was a beautiful book. It's one I might eventually get like a physical copy of and just have that I can flick through and reread again, because I just really enjoyed this. So I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Definitely worth picking up if you're interested, and just such a lovely book, so definitely recommend it. This book I read so far in May is Donal Ryan's Strange Flowers. This is a book that I have been highly anticipating since I bought it last year, and I'm really glad to say that I absolutely love this book. This is a short book, and it starts with these characters called Paddy and Kit, who are devastated when their daughter Moll walks away one day. They think she's just going to the village, but then she never comes back, and they don't know what has happened to her. She just seems to have emptied her post office account and has gone off somewhere without any explanation. And her parents are, you know, understandably left devastated and confused, and they're mourning for a long time, not knowing what had happened to her. And then 5 years later, she walks back through their front door, and they end up kind of starting to slowly find out what happened to her while she was gone and where she went. And it comes to light that she is now married with a child, and then her husband ends up coming to this small Irish village to try and find her, and he is a black man from London. And this is like an Irish village at the time that had never, like most people had never ever seen like a person of colour before. And then her husband Alexander ends up staying with the family, and he ends up becoming part of the community. We get the story through like a bunch of different characters. We start off with Paddy, and then we go to Alexander, we go to Moll eventually, and then their son, and we basically get like, it's like a multi-generational story through little tidbits of each person, and we find a little bit more about each person and about the story as a whole. And I just loved this. I just love Donal Ryan's writing. I think he's just a beautiful, simple way of telling a very gentle story. This is just one of those stories that, like, there was a little bit of sadness in there, but overall it was just a story that made me happy and made me feel warm. And I just loved everything to do with Alexander, and the way he came into this village, and the way that most people were completely shocked when they first saw him, because they'd never seen someone who had looked like him before. And then how he just became accepted and became a part of the community, and like joined like the hurling and the GAA teams, and how he became like the local gardener. And I just really loved those parts of the story. They just really made me happy, and I just thoroughly enjoyed my reading of this book. I think this is a book, I think Donal Ryan, he has a type of writing style that might not suit everyone, but for me, he just always completely clicks for me. I always love, like, I've read, I think this is my 3rd or 4th book by Donal Ryan, and I've loved all of them. I just love the way he tells stories, and he tends to tell all his stories in this type of style where you're getting little bits from each character, and as a whole, they tell the whole story then. And yeah, this was just beautiful. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and yeah, I just really enjoyed this one, and I'm so glad I picked it up, and I definitely recommend people give it a chance as well. So those are all the books I read in May. If you guys have read any of these or have any thoughts, please leave them below. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys again next time.